So hi YouTube, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna deliver on the promise that I've been making for months. Let me introduce you to the Invisible Men Germany. For those of you that don't know, the Invisible Men is a variety of projects from a variety of countries, all with the same content. That is collecting and then publishing quotes from sex buyers. Men who buy sexual access to prostitute people, usually women. They have online forums where they congregate and they exchange information about the women, they review them. And it tells you a lot about, it tells you what they think. When they think, no one's listening. At the very least in Germany, these forums are legal. There's a lot of them. I think it tells you the ugly truth about prostitution, and that is that sex buyers hate women. And crazily enough, that is still a really controversial statement to make, especially in Germany. I've since I've published this project, I've received some backlash from people who are like, "This is cherry picking, you're a con, whatever." Um, that happens no matter what I do. But I want to show you the information I've collected and present to you why I think that while this is not a scientific study, it is still a valuable resource, and it still tells us a lot about the sex trade, though we can argue about the percentage of men it represents. It represents a significant number. So that starts off by I've collected 350 citations, 350 original quotes, because I didn't want to do just 10 or 20, because that's easy to point your finger and say that's cherry picked. I did 350. I spent hours on these forums, and I didn't have to look very far to find misogynistic ones. So if you click on here, the quotes, it's gonna just show you all of them, like one after the other. And the feedback that I've been getting is that people can actually only read a couple. Like most people only read like 3 or 4, and then they can't do it anymore because it's just too gross. I get that. So again, like big fat trigger warning, do not read this if you can't bear descriptions of sexual violence. And now for all of you who don't think that prostitution has anything to do with sexual violence, and these are all a bunch of nice guys, or at least like 9 out of 10 of them are, then, well, you read it and you tell me if that's violations of women's boundaries, if that's, you have a look for yourself. Okay, so here, right, you got an overview. Yeah, I went to the trouble of making, these little images that if there's a quote specifically, oh my god, my computer's slow. If there's a quote specifically that you want to share, like you want to share this example of a guy saying, "Is a whore just a piece of fuck meat, or does one have to show respect?" You can. Like, you're free to download any text, any image on this page. Oh yeah, these are all from German men. In Germany, prostitution has been legal for 17 years, and our government has been telling everyone that prostitution is just a job for 17 years. And the idea is that when you do that, you change the attitudes of the men and they treat them as respectfully as they would someone working in retail. Now, of course, yes, I know people in retail are disrespected too, but I want to know who of you who has worked in retail has been called fuck meat. And we're going to see lots more examples of that. Like today, I'm not going to read those out to you. That's not necessary, right? Want to see that again. This is not a page that necessarily needs, every abolitionist or pro-abolitionist to read all of it. That's not the point. I don't want you to do that to yourselves because it is really hard emotionally. It's like, don't do that. I want you to send it to people who don't believe that there is a problem with sexual violence and prostitution and racism and misogyny. That is the point of this website, to get those people thinking, to get them to look at what they don't want to look at. Um, and we know what's different about this. This is not just a collection of quotes, but I actually did some analysis. I actually make it possible for people who want to, get very specific information about sex buyers to use this website. So there's a bunch of different things I did. I'm just going to go through them real quick. So there's some analysis, right? I read these quotes and actually more. And I developed these different categories. So if you're looking, for example, specifically for, a man violating a woman's boundary or whatever, you can find all these different categories and you can click on that and study that aspect specifically. And if you don't want to read the quotes and you just want, like a summary of what are the recurrent themes in these quotes, this is the page that you can look to. I know it's long, but I mean, there's a lot of information right there. So that's the first thing I did. Then what I noticed, I mean, there's some descriptions of human trafficking in there, but most of it is really about legal prostitution. It's definitely about legal establishments. It's about legal large brothels, apartment brothels, and those that we know by name. And actually, a lot of these quotes are from Google Maps, if you can believe it. They're not even from some deep, dark forum. They're from Google Maps. They're right on here by name, the establishments which we know, which are named. And what I did was I noticed a pattern, and that is that apparently, which no news report has ever clearly stated or just made a list of these, we have a chronic problem with human trafficking, abuse of minors, rape, and murder inside legal brothels in Germany. Legal brothels with a license. One of the worst of them here, the Pascha, was actually built by the city of Cologne. It was built by part of my government because supposedly legal brothels keep women safe. And what happened? There was human trafficking in there. As some of these women were very young, it's debated to this, like, we don't have the official information from the police if they were minors, but they certainly weren't here without available papers, trafficked in from Africa. There was a woman murdered. There was an attempt on a woman's life. There was another attempt on a woman's life, and then the owner was indicted for tax fraud. Because, women's lives, no one's responsible, but don't pay your taxes, you're in deep shit. And this just shows you, these are just the cases that I can find just by Googling. This is not, there's a lot more going on that we don't know about, that the police hasn't caught or that's not official. But this just gives you some idea of how common it is in legal German brothels to have criminal and violent men doing horrific things. Then, like I said, I develop these categories. I look for patterns. What happens all the time? We get men complaining all the time that women don't do exactly what they want when they say they want it. We got like about 200 examples of women showing that they don't want to be with the men and the men noticing the women don't want them. And not always, but usually carrying on anyway. We got a ton of misogyny, objectification. You can see if you want to click on this, you can see how these men interact with pimps. Sometimes it's very cozy, very friendly. Sometimes it's kind of antagonistic, because pimps are scary people. A lot of them are in criminal gangs, and even the punters are scared of them. So if you're interested to know any of these specific aspects, you can. You want to, you're writing a paper about racism, or you're having a debate with somebody who doesn't believe that prostitution's racist. It is unbelievably racist. And if you want some concrete examples, these are all real quotes from German sex buyers, and my computer's slow, is right here. So these men talking about preferences, talking about fucking some asylum seeker pussy. They use the N-word. They're talking about women from Northern Africa being dirty, women from the Middle East being diseased. They either love or hate Eastern European women. I'm going to make a video about the racism and prostitution in the future. I'm going to tell you all this in detail. And if you want to have a preview, or you just, you want something to back you up in an argument, which is not a scientific paper, but out of the mouths of the men who pay for sexual access, this is it. Okay, what else? We got keywords. So if you're looking for even more specific, like you want to know, just these words, they tell you trends, right? A lot of guys don't want to use condoms. A lot of women don't want to be kissed. They don't want to have men go down on them. That tells you a lot about the nature of prostitution. Think about that. A lot of the women want to get it done really quickly. A lot of the guys are looking for young women. You can see what kind of words they like using. Where most of the prostitution takes place, where the women are from. And if you are in Germany, or I don't know, you've been here and you're like, okay, I've lived in Hanover and I want to know what men from Hanover are saying, something close to home. If you live there, you click on Hanover. And then you get to know, yeah, what whatever men are saying. It's, yeah. Um, then you've got the sources. These forums themselves have pretty terrible names. This is all legal. Some of it's kind of in a gray area, and these are like for-profit companies. It's insane. One of these forums actually has an office in my city. It's disgusting. Like I have to walk by it sometimes and see their offices, and they're like a legitimate business. And what the men on these forums write is just abysmal. And if you don't believe me, check it out. You got other keywords. You can see, I don't know if you want to know how men talk about their girlfriends, their wives, um, the feminist, the Nordic model. It's all there. What else have we got? Yeah, I'm gonna make probably a whole video just about this, which is so people can accuse me that I cherry picked those 350 quotes. So what I did was actually run a word search through like 4 major German forums to see if the words they use, which words are common. If I'm being fair with my selection, right? So if you want to say, okay, of course your selection turns up a lot of bad words because you picked those, you can see that actually there's some pretty awful words really being used a lot on these forums. For example, teen or teeny or some variation of that is used 8,138 times. So I made these images to make it look, to give it some appeal in terms of design. But if you want to know the exact numbers, they're down here. Like I just counted how many hits do I get for these words. And yeah, there's a lot more. I'm going to make a whole video about just the word frequency, which is not just my collection, but really the language on these forums. Right. Then I have a page of statistics where I tried to collect as much statistics about German sex buyers as possible. Like if you're doing a presentation or just you don't want to read the horrible quotes, but you're looking like for statistics and numbers, it's all here, and I linked to the sources. It's still totally insane to me that the last large-scale study that anybody did on sex buyers in Germany is from 94. No one's cared since then to really research that. I know, I think Melissa Fali has done some research on German sex buyers, but like from Germany internally, there has been no research, and believe me, I looked for it. There's been no large scale studies on these men anywhere. There's been some from the pro prostitution lobby, and even some of the replies that they got were kind of awful from the men. But anyway, that's not the topic of today. So here you got a ton of statistics. What kind of women do they want to buy? What's their racial preference? What's their age preference? And these are like from the forums. This is like not some of these are scientific, some of these are from the forums. So of course it's not 100% reliable. It's difficult to get a definite data. This is the best that I could do. And it's all there. Right. There's a bit more. Maybe I should tell you quickly. I had to censor all the prices on these from the quotes. Like, of course, I censored all the women's names. I had to censor the guys' users' names. I have to legally respect the privacy of these men to hide behind, even have their fake online identities be hidden. I'm legally mandated to do that, but they're not legally mandated to not buy women. Well, anyway, I had to censor the prices because actually, you know how prostitution is a normal job? Well, you gotta pay your taxes. So here's a news flash. That means even the women on the street, that means women in street prostitution have to pay taxes. There's a support organization in Berlin which works with women in street prostitution, and they say that tax collectors actually go on the streets, go to the women, and take money off of them in cash. And what they also do is, using these forums, which I think they should be using to hunt human traffickers, because there is evidence of human trafficking on these forums, like in plain sight. They instead they use these forums to look for women who are making large amounts of money. so that they can then check if they're paying their taxes, and if not, they can, look for her and knock on her door. So any address, any name, and any price I had to censor. But just so you know, and you're gonna have to kind of take it on faith or do your own research. Just because a man was paying like a 3-digit price does not mean that he talked about the woman any nicer. It's not like, yes, the I think the cheapest woman on here was like, I think 10 or 20 euro, and the most expensive was somewhere 300 and or over, I think. They were still whores whose orifices were holes. In the way that these men talked, there was not a noticeable difference depending on how much they paid for her. And lastly, I made sure to make my methodology public. I'm really sorry I've not had the time to translate this into English yet, because I'm working on another project which has a deadline very soon, so I haven't found the time, but this tells you where it's coming from. So, like I said, I've already gotten criticism for this project. There's already people saying, "Oh my God, you cherry picked 350 quotes. This is all not real." Or maybe it is real, but these are like the fringe guys. How fringe is this? How fringe is a forum with 2 million posts? How fringe are forums with 70,000 users? Like, all in all, these are just the let me be clear, these are just the registered users. These are guys who made a profile. There is a ton more. I can see that, because if you go on the page, you can see the user number, the registered user number, and then you can also see how many guests are currently online. And just from the number of guests that are currently online, I know that there is a even bigger number of guys going on there who don't have a profile, but they're still reading it. They're still utilizing it. They're still using it to find women who are going to do what they want. Because that's the purpose of these forums, telling each other that chick doesn't bow her head and that chick does. So go visit her. So even the guys who are like, oh, I don't know, it's kind of gross. The men, I don't like how they talk, but the information's useful. There's a lot of those guys. You're not better just because you're not writing on these forums. Like any nice guy punter listening to this, just because you've not caught a woman a whore doesn't mean that you've respected her. If you've used these forums, you are culpable. You're part of the problem. And if you ask me, if you've ever paid a woman instead of getting her interested in you on the basis of, you being a desirable person, if you've bridged the gap of attraction, if you've been in a situation where you were attracted and she wasn't and you paid so that she would, you don't respect women. And if you take part in an industry where pimps traffic women in, where the guy before you or after you is just a fucking rapist, you're part of the problem. Okay, now we got that out of the way. Right, I talk about how representative these guys are. I think 100, hundreds of thousands of men is pretty fucking representative. Some people disagree. And like I state here, okay, let's imagine only like half of the guys are pretty fucking awful, disrespect her boundaries, are abusive, or maybe only like 20%. Only 20%, that still means she's got 1 or 2 buyers a day who are hurting her. Let's imagine 9 out of 10 are sweethearts. She's still worried that the next guy is gonna be a rapist. 1 in 10 is still too big of a problem, and I don't think it's 1 in 10. Not by the evidence that I've seen. So the quotes are pretty recent. They're from the past few years. And it's all within since prostitution was legalized. It was sort of legal before. It was freed up somewhat, and sort of integrated into the job market post 2001. It's pretty representative in terms of geography. Like, these are the different German states, like Bavaria, Berlin, whatever. It correlates mostly with, the population size of these places, so it's representative in those terms. It's representative mostly in terms of where the women come from. Surprise, surprise, most of them are foreigners. The brothels are a bit overrepresented and the apartment brothels are a bit underrepresented. That's because I started my research on Google Maps, and Google Maps usually only has like the big establishments out there. The big establishments with like big names that people in the city actually know even if they've never been. Those that have supposedly, the best standards for the women, the best security. Those are overrepresented. And then, like I said, even if not all the guys are exactly like this, even if some of them supposedly are sweethearts, the fact is that the women deal with horrible men all the time, and this is why it matters to expose these men. Right, and then, oh, I should absolutely not forget this. I was also inspired to do this project by the activism and the political analysis and the wisdom and the bravery of Huschka Mao. She's a German exiled woman, and you should all read her blog. She is amazing, and she's also a great cat mom. She's got a really cute cat. Um, I've had the privilege of meeting her and talking to her, and she's just this is a lot of what she's written has been translated to English because she has a very succinct analysis of prostitution and of punchers specifically, and she actually gets up on stage, which at this point very few women are prepared to do, which I totally get why. It's difficult to speak out. She does. She's getting harassed for it. The pro lobby hate her. Punters hate her. She actually has, a punter stalking her, trying to, harass her at events. And she's still doing it, which is just, yeah. You should all go and read what she has to say, listen to her. And then at the end, if you've looked at my website and you've read survivor statements and you're still like, no, I think this is the dark side of legal prostitution, but there's a bright side. You're kind of exaggerating, or there's like good pockets in these. If you still believe in like the good sex buyer or whatever, a guy who isn't participating and also is somehow totally separate from all of these guys, I don't know. I just encourage you to do your own research, and if you're not from Germany, go do it in your country. If you're an abolitionist, we need Invisible Men projects from other countries. We have Great Britain, Canada, France, I think Spain, no, I couldn't find it, and Israel covered. We got Germany covered. If you're from the US, start a project. If you're wherever you are, if you can do one, do one. Don't do it if you have a severe sexual trauma. Please don't. These forums are horrific. They are full of pornography, but do it as a group. Don't do it like me, all on your own, because that's not good for your mental health. Do it in a group. Expose these guys, and if you're on the side of things who are like, no, I still believe in the good sex buyer, go on one of these forums and do your own research. Like, look for him if you can find him. I'm gonna be really impressed if you can find a significant number of guys who are operating in a totally separate industry, being super respectful and having lots of making these women really, really happy and giving lots of fulfilled sexuality. Yeah, I'd be impressed. Okay, and I think that's it for today. And in the coming months, I'm gonna go through some of this information bit by bit. If you want to have a look, hop on over there and you got some questions, like you can't find information, or you'd like me to talk about any of the information specifically, then please leave a comment down below. You can also comment on here, and like I said again, please share this website. Don't share it with people who are triggered by reading descriptions of sexual violence. Like, be careful who you send it to. You can send it to people who are undecided. You can send it to, if you're in Germany, you can send it to your politicians, your local politicians that are like the equality minister or something. That's also something I'm gonna try do. The people who want to close their eyes to this, who want to shut it off, who want to pretend it's not happening, they are the ones who have to read it. Like us abolitionists who already know that it's a fucking disaster and a women's rights disaster. We don't have to do this to ourselves. The people who still defend it do. They have to face this. And they have to come up with a plan on how to eradicate it. And if they can come up with a plan on how to eradicate it without eradicating the sex industry, again, I'm going to be really impressed. Because I've been looking for that plan and I can't find it. And that's it for today. Thank you for listening, and bye.